Alex Morgan pulled up the long, winding road that led to his lake cabin, the late afternoon sun glinting off the water like scattered diamonds. The air smelled of pine and fresh lake breeze, and for the first time in weeks, Alex felt a sense of calm that seemed almost foreign after the constant demands of being a police chief. The cabin sat quietly at the edge of the trees, its wooden frame reflecting the orange glow of the sunset, promising peace and solitude. He parked his truck, opened the back, and started unloading supplies. A cooler for drinks, a basket of snacks, and a few books he had been meaning to read for months. He paused for a moment, letting the soft sound of water lapping against the shore sink in. This was exactly what he needed. No deadlines, no paperwork, no interruptions, just the quiet, the lake, and the feeling of being off duty. But peace, as Alex knew, was often fleeting. As he carried a stack of firewood to the cabin, he noticed movement in the distance. A group of teenagers was walking along the edge of the lake, laughing and pointing toward the cabins. Alex slowed his pace, squinting. One of them, a boy with a confident swagger, seemed to be taking notes, measuring distances, and looking at the cabin with obvious interest. Alex knew that look. It was the look of someone planning something they shouldn't be. He stopped completely, pretending to adjust the firewood, and watched. The boy introduced himself to the others as Tyler, and Alex immediately recognized the name. Tyler was the son of HOA Karen, a woman known throughout the neighborhood for her insistence on rules, her need to control, and her sharp sense of entitlement. If Tyler was involved, Alex had a feeling this was not just innocent curiosity. He set the wood down quietly, making sure not to draw attention, and kept observing. Tyler and his friends walked closer to the edge of the cabin property, glancing around as though checking for eyes. They whispered, pointed at the cabin, and then one of them pulled out a phone, showing a picture of the dock and the lakefront. Alex felt a small tightening in his chest. "Planning something," he muttered under his breath. He decided not to intervene immediately. Instead, he finished setting up the firewood, brought the cooler inside, and opened the sliding door to let the fresh air in. He watched from the window as Tyler's group wandered back toward the main road, probably to gather more supplies or plan their next move. Alex allowed himself a small smirk. Teenagers often overestimate their cleverness. After unpacking, he stepped outside, barefoot, feeling the soft grass under his feet. The water sparkled, birds flew across the sky, and the world seemed perfect in that moment. Yet he couldn't shake the sense that the peace of the cabin might be short-lived. Alex had learned through years of service that trouble often arrived quietly, like shadows at dusk, before announcing itself fully. He started a small fire in the cabin's stone fireplace and poured himself a cup of coffee. The smell of pine logs burning and the warmth of the flames should have been enough to settle him, but his mind kept wandering back to Tyler. Why had he been so interested in the cabin? What was he planning? Alex knew the boy's mother would never admit to encouraging mischief outright, but Tyler had always been the kind to push boundaries. Alex took out his phone and checked the local community feed. Sure enough, there was a post from someone tagging the lake cabins, hinting at the best weekend ever and tagging friends in the area. Nothing concrete, but enough to confirm Alex's suspicion. The boy was thinking about using someone else's property for his own fun. A small laugh escaped him, more at the predictability of teenagers than anything else. He set his cup down, his expression settling into one of calm focus. He would enjoy his weekend, yes, but he would also keep an eye out. Being a chief of police had trained him to anticipate moves, to think several steps ahead, and that's exactly what he planned to do. Tyler might think he had the upper hand, but Alex had patience, strategy, and years of experience on his side. As the sun dipped behind the trees and the first stars began to twinkle above the lake, Alex took a deep breath. The cabin was his sanctuary, and he intended to keep it that way. Whatever Tyler was planning, it would have to go through him first. And Alex Morgan never let anything, or anyone, catch him off guard. The next morning, Alex woke to the soft sound of waves gently brushing the shore. The cabin was quiet, birds chirped in the trees, and a slight breeze carried the scent of pine through the open windows. He brewed a fresh cup of coffee, enjoying the calm that had returned after yesterday's small observation. Yet he couldn't shake the memory of Tyler and his friends lingering near the cabin. Something told him their interest wasn't fleeting. After breakfast, Alex stepped outside to stretch his legs and take in the lake view. The water shimmered under the morning sun, reflecting a sky so blue it seemed unreal. As he walked along the dock, he noticed footprints leading from the path near the main road toward the back of the cabin. They were fresh, light, and small, teenage footprints. Someone had been exploring the property overnight. Alex frowned but remained calm. He knew how curious teenagers could be, and he also knew how quickly curiosity could turn into a plan. He returned to the cabin and decided to do a little recon of his own. Pulling out his binoculars, he scanned the neighboring cabins from a safe distance. In the far corner of the parking area near the trees, he spotted Tyler and two friends. They were laughing, pointing at something in their hands, likely a phone with a plan or map. "Planning a party," Alex muttered under his breath, finishing his coffee in one smooth sip. He walked back to the cabin, already thinking about a strategy. He had rules of his own, after all, and one of them was protecting what belonged to him. Tyler might think he could sneak in and set up a big weekend gathering, but Alex had experience spotting patterns, anticipating moves, and most importantly, staying calm while others rushed in panic or excitement. By mid-morning, Tyler's group had moved closer to the cabin. Alex could see small boxes and bags being carried by hand, clearly supplies for something. He didn't panic. Instead, he observed quietly from behind the trees, noting their movements. There was a sense of entitlement in Tyler's stance, a confidence that only comes when someone assumes they are untouchable. Alex decided it was time for a subtle intervention. He stepped out onto the front porch of the cabin, greeting them with a friendly but firm wave. "Morning, guys," he said casually. "Beautiful day for the lake, isn't it?" Tyler froze for a second, then smiled awkwardly. "Yeah, it's nice," he replied, trying to mask his surprise. Tyler clearly hadn't expected anyone to be watching, much less to be greeted so calmly. "I see you've been checking out the cabin," Alex continued, keeping his tone neutral. "Just a reminder, this place is private, so I'd appreciate it if you didn't come too close without asking." Tyler exchanged glances with his friends, as if silently debating how to respond. "Oh, we're just walking around," he said. "We weren't going to, do anything." Alex raised an eyebrow, smiling faintly. "Walking around is fine. Exploring is fine. Planning events here without permission, not so much." The boys nodded, looking slightly embarrassed. They didn't argue, but Alex could see the gears turning in Tyler's head. Teenagers rarely took hints without testing the limits. Alex wasn't worried. He had all day, and he preferred to handle situations with patience first before escalating. After a few more minutes of casual observation, Alex stepped back inside the cabin and began arranging the property in small ways. He moved furniture, locked certain areas, and subtly made signs of active presence, things that quietly indicated the cabin was being watched and cared for. Tyler might think he could outsmart someone, but he wouldn't notice these subtle changes until it was too late. By noon, the group had retreated to the main road again, probably to gather more supplies for their weekend plans. Alex watched until they disappeared behind the trees, then exhaled slowly. He knew this was only the beginning. Teenagers with a plan rarely gave up, and Tyler's confidence meant they were likely to return stronger. Alex returned to the cabin's porch and looked over the lake, sipping a fresh cup of coffee. He let the sunlight warm his face and the soft breeze ruffle his hair. Planning, observing, and anticipating, that was his weekend now. He would enjoy the calm as much as he could, but he was ready for the challenge. Whatever Tyler had in mind, he would need to get through Alex first. And Alex Morgan never let anything catch him off guard. By mid-afternoon, the sun hung high over the lake, its reflection sparkling like scattered diamonds on the water. Alex Morgan had settled into a rhythm. He would work on small projects inside the cabin, step outside to observe, and keep an eye on the path leading from the main road. He knew Tyler and his friends weren't done plotting. Their interest in the cabin had not faded. If anything, it had grown bolder. As he was arranging some firewood near the porch, Alex noticed movement at the edge of the trees. Tyler had returned, this time with two more friends. They carried small boxes and backpacks, their excitement barely contained. Tyler looked around nervously, but his confidence still shone through. He clearly thought the cabin would be easy to use without anyone noticing. Alex didn't rush. He took a deep breath and stepped out onto the porch. "Afternoon, guys," he called casually, his tone friendly but firm. "Nice to see you back." Tyler froze and then smiled, trying to hide the surprise. "Oh, hey," he said, shifting his weight. "We, just wanted to check the area again, make sure it's safe." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Safe for what?" His tone was calm, but the underlying message was clear. Tyler hesitated. "Just exploring," he mumbled. His friends avoided eye contact, shuffling their feet nervously. It was clear they hadn't expected anyone to confront them directly. Alex took a slow step down from the porch, keeping his movements relaxed and unthreatening. "Exploring is fine," he said. "I enjoy the lake too, but I want to be clear this cabin is private. Any plans for it without permission are not okay. Do you understand?" Tyler's bravado flickered for a moment, replaced by a faint unease. "Yeah, we get it," he said, though his voice lacked confidence. "Good," Alex replied, giving a small nod. "I'd appreciate it if you packed up whatever you're carrying and left the property. You can always come back later if you ask first." For a second, Tyler looked like he was considering defiance, but the look on Alex's face, calm, steady, and observant, was enough to make him pause. He glanced at his friends, who looked equally uncertain. Teenagers often think rules are optional until someone shows them they are not. "All right, we'll go," Tyler said finally, his voice lower than before. Alex smiled faintly and nodded. "Thanks, that's all I ask." As Tyler and his friends retreated toward the main road, Alex watched every step. He didn't say another word but allowed them to feel the weight of his presence. He didn't need to shout or make threats. Being the chief of police had taught him the power of quiet authority and patient observation. Once they were out of sight, Alex returned inside and locked the cabin doors, making sure windows were secured. He moved strategically through the rooms, subtly placing items in ways that suggested constant activity. Lights slightly dimmed, chairs shifted, small personal touches that indicated someone was home and paying attention. Sitting back on the porch with a fresh cup of coffee, Alex let his mind wander briefly. Teenagers like Tyler rarely learned lessons from casual warnings. They tested boundaries because they assumed adults wouldn't notice or wouldn't care enough to intervene. Alex knew he had to stay one step ahead. He also allowed himself a small smile. This wasn't just about keeping the cabin safe. It was about strategy, observation, and subtle influence. Tyler had made a mistake underestimating him. He had no idea he was dealing with someone trained to anticipate, plan, and act without panic. As the afternoon stretched on, Alex kept watch from the porch. The sunlight began to soften, painting the lake in shades of gold and orange. He could see Tyler's group in the distance, lingering near the tree line, clearly plotting their next move. They hadn't given up, but Alex didn't feel tension or fear. He felt focus and preparation. By evening, he had arranged small signs of activity around the cabin. Lights on in certain rooms, the sound of music faintly playing from a speaker, and even a few outdoor chairs strategically positioned. Every detail was meant to show that someone was watching and someone capable. When night finally fell, Alex sat on the dock with his legs dangling over the water, sipping coffee and enjoying the cool breeze. The stars reflected perfectly in the lake, yet his mind remained alert. Tyler would return, of that he was certain. And when he did, Alex would be ready. Whatever plans Tyler had, they would have to go through him first. And Alex Morgan never let anyone take what wasn't theirs. The following morning, the lake was calm, almost eerily so. Alex Morgan had woken early as usual and stepped outside to breathe in the crisp air. The water shimmered under the first light of dawn, and the soft rustling of leaves created a soothing rhythm. Yet beneath the calm, Alex remained alert. Tyler and his friends were still on his mind, and he had a strong feeling they were planning something bigger than mere curiosity. After breakfast, Alex grabbed his binoculars and walked along the edge of the property. The trees provided a natural cover, and from this vantage point he could see the main road clearly. Within minutes, his suspicions were confirmed. Tyler and his group had returned, moving with purpose, carrying more boxes, coolers, and even a few large bags. Their excitement was palpable, and Tyler, as always, led the way with an air of confidence that only comes from assuming no one is watching. Alex didn't step out yet. He stayed hidden, observing the group carefully. The teenagers were clearly discussing plans, gestures, pointing toward the cabin and whispering to one another. Their energy was infectious, but Alex knew that misplaced confidence was often the undoing of reckless plans. He silently noted their actions, every box, every glance, every shift in stance. "They're serious about this," he muttered to himself, taking a sip of coffee. Alex decided it was time to set up a subtle monitoring system. He moved around the cabin, adjusting lights, opening blinds just enough to suggest someone was inside, and placing small objects strategically to indicate constant movement. He even set a few harmless markers near the edges of the lawn, objects that would make slight sounds if disturbed, providing him with early warning. Tyler and his friends had no idea how closely they were being watched. By mid-morning, Tyler and his friends were closer than ever. They laughed, organized their supplies, and set up what looked like the beginning of a party, all while believing no one was observing. Alex remained calm, enjoying the quiet satisfaction of seeing his strategy in action. Teenagers often misjudged their environment, thinking themselves cleverer than they were. Alex had seen this countless times, both as a police chief and as someone who enjoyed peaceful weekends by the lake. As he watched, Alex noticed Tyler pull out his phone and snap pictures of the cabin. The boy was clearly planning to post on social media, maybe to attract more friends. Alex smiled faintly. That confidence would be his undoing if he wasn't careful. He made a mental note to subtly reinforce the idea that the cabin was not to be taken lightly. Around noon, Alex decided to take a more hands-on approach without revealing his identity fully. He walked casually toward the dock, making slight noises that suggested activity inside the cabin. A chair shifted, a small bell chimed from the front door, and music played faintly from a speaker. Each sound was deliberate, designed to let the teenagers know someone was home and attentive. Tyler paused, looking around. His friends exchanged puzzled glances. "Do you think someone's here?" one whispered. Tyler waved them off confidently, but the doubt was creeping in. Alex stayed hidden, observing their reactions carefully. The balance of control was shifting, and he could feel it. As the afternoon sun rose higher, the group seemed to regroup, adjusting their plan in response to the subtle signs of monitoring. Alex stayed alert, mentally cataloging their movements and predicting the next steps. The story of a weekend party was turning into a game of observation, patience, and strategy. Every move Tyler made was being carefully recorded in Alex's mind, preparing him for the inevitable confrontation. By early evening, Alex had successfully created the impression that the cabin was well guarded and observed, without ever having revealed himself. Tyler's energy had shifted from bold confidence to cautious calculation. The balance of power was changing. Alex knew that by nightfall, the real test would come, the moment Tyler would either push forward or back down. As the golden sunlight reflected off the lake, Alex took a deep breath and settled on the porch. The cabin was quiet, but the tension in the air was unmistakable. He sipped his coffee, eyes scanning the path. Tyler would return soon, and when he did, Alex would be ready to assert control with patience, strategy, and subtle authority. No one took over Alex Morgan's cabin without consequence. And Alex Morgan never let anyone catch him off guard. By late afternoon, the lake had settled into a calm rhythm, with sunlight glittering on the water and a gentle breeze moving through the trees. Alex Morgan, sitting on the cabin's porch, watched quietly. Tyler and his friends had returned, now carrying even more supplies. Boxes, coolers, and backpacks were carefully balanced as they walked along the path near the trees. The boy's confidence was still apparent, but Alex noticed small signs of uncertainty. The way Tyler glanced around, the hesitation in his friend's steps. Alex knew this was the moment to act with subtlety and strategy. He moved inside the cabin, checking small details. Windows secured, doors locked, and items rearranged to suggest someone was constantly moving about inside. Then he began setting up his small surprises, designed to startle without causing harm. A chair slightly tilted, a door left slightly ajar, a faint sound triggered by a hanging wind chime, all carefully placed to make the teenagers feel watched and observed. Tyler and his friends had no idea. They approached the cabin, laughing and joking, convinced the property was empty. Alex stayed hidden behind the trees, binoculars in hand, noting every movement. The boxes were stacked near the front, coolers placed strategically, and music faintly playing from a small speaker Tyler had hidden in the bushes. Alex smiled to himself. Teenagers always thought the world operated on their rules, and they rarely anticipated consequences. He had all the time he needed to ensure they learned a lesson without anyone getting hurt. As the group stepped closer, Alex decided to add a final touch. He placed a few harmless markers on the lawn, small stones and sticks that would create a subtle noise if moved, just enough to make Tyler and his friends aware that the cabin was being observed, without scaring them too early. It was a psychological game, one Alex had mastered over years of police work. Tyler's grin faltered slightly when he stepped on a small stick, hearing a faint crack. "Did you hear that?" he asked, looking around nervously. "It's probably nothing," one friend said, though their voice lacked conviction. Alex allowed a few more subtle sounds to play out, chairs shifting, a faint jingling of keys from the cabin, and the soft chime of the wind bells. Tyler paused again, clearly feeling that someone was closer than they realized. Alex stayed perfectly still, hiding in plain sight while the teenagers debated whether to proceed. By evening, Tyler had positioned the majority of the supplies near the cabin. The music grew louder, and laughter filled the air, yet the group's confidence was tempered by the subtle signs that the cabin was anything but empty. Alex knew that once night fell, the confrontation would be inevitable, and he wanted to maintain the upper hand. He stepped back slightly, allowing the teenagers to feel the tension of uncertainty. The psychological pressure was working. Tyler's plans had been carefully built, but Alex had dismantled their confidence with nothing more than observation, subtle sounds, and the suggestion of active presence. The boy had not expected the cabin to be defended so cleverly, and now he was beginning to rethink his plan. As the sky turned orange and the sun dipped toward the horizon, Alex prepared for the next step. He made sure the cabin's lights were on in strategic areas, hinting that someone was inside and watching. A small lamp on the porch flickered slightly, enough to suggest movement. Every detail was intentional, a silent message that this was no ordinary cabin and no ordinary weekend. Tyler's friends whispered nervously, glancing around. The excitement that had carried them earlier was slowly replaced by doubt. The cabin was no longer just a building. It had become a challenge, a puzzle they couldn't quite solve. Alex observed quietly, ready to intervene if needed, knowing that he had created the perfect balance of suspense and control. By nightfall, the lake had grown still, the air cool, and the first stars appeared. Tyler and his friends were close to the cabin now, their confidence tempered, their plans partially in motion but already uneasy. Alex took a seat on the porch, sipping his coffee and letting the scene unfold. He could have stepped in at any moment, but patience and timing were key. Whatever Tyler had planned, he would have to get through Alex Morgan first. And Alex Morgan never let anyone take what wasn't theirs without a well-earned lesson. Night had fallen over the lake, casting the cabin in a soft silver glow under the moonlight. Alex Morgan sat on the porch, his eyes scanning the tree line where Tyler and his friends had been lingering all afternoon. The air was cool, the water still, and a soft breeze carried the faint scent of pine and damp earth. It was peaceful, but Alex knew that peace was about to be tested. From his hidden vantage point, he watched Tyler approach the cabin with renewed determination. The boy had gathered his courage and supplies, convinced that this time he would finally take control. He carried a backpack stuffed with party essentials, and two friends followed, balancing coolers and boxes. Their confidence was evident, yet Alex could see subtle signs of doubt creeping in. The way Tyler's shoulders tensed, the frequent glances around, the careful steps as they approached the cabin. Alex remained perfectly still, letting the scene unfold. He had spent the entire afternoon setting subtle traps, small sounds, faint movements, and strategic lighting, all designed to make the teenagers aware that the cabin was not empty. He didn't need to act yet. The psychological pressure was already working. As Tyler stepped closer, a small stick shifted under his foot, creating a soft, crackling sound. The group froze, exchanging nervous glances. Alex allowed a faint jingle of keys to resonate from inside the cabin, then the subtle creak of a chair moving. The tension in the air grew palpable. "Do you hear that?" Tyler whispered, trying to keep his voice steady. "Probably just the wind," one friend replied, though the uncertainty in their tone betrayed them. Alex stepped out from behind the trees, finally revealing himself. He kept his posture relaxed, a calm smile on his face. "Evening," he said, his voice steady but authoritative. "I see you've returned." Tyler froze completely, his confident grin disappearing. Hi," he stammered, unsure how to respond. His friends looked equally startled, realizing that the cabin was indeed occupied by someone who clearly wasn't going to be ignored. Alex walked slowly toward them, hands visible but calm. "I noticed you've been interested in my cabin," he continued. "It's private property, and while I appreciate your enthusiasm for the lake, any plans to use it without permission are not acceptable." Tyler tried to regain his composure. We didn't mean any harm, we just thought." Alex held up a hand, cutting him off gently. "I understand curiosity and excitement, but there are rules for a reason, and part of living in a community or visiting someone's property is respecting those rules." The teenagers shifted uncomfortably. Tyler's bravado was gone, replaced by a mix of embarrassment and realization. Alex's calm, confident demeanor left no room for argument, and it was clear he was in complete control of the situation. "Now," Alex continued, "I'd like you to gather your things and leave the property peacefully. You can come back another time, but only if you ask first. Understood?" Tyler nodded, his earlier defiance melted away. "Yes, we understand," he said quietly, glancing at his friends who murmured agreement. Alex allowed himself a small, approving smile. "Good. I think you'll find that respecting boundaries makes life a lot easier and a lot safer." He led them toward the path, ensuring they carried their supplies back without incident. As they walked away, Tyler glanced back at the cabin, a mixture of awe and newfound respect in his eyes. He realized for the first time that not everything could be taken lightly, and that experience, calm observation, and strategy often outweighed confidence and haste. Once the group had disappeared into the night, Alex returned to the porch, sitting with a sense of quiet satisfaction. The lake reflected the moonlight perfectly, undisturbed and peaceful once more. The cabin was safe, the rules respected, and a lesson had been learned, without anger, without confrontation, just careful observation and patience. Alex poured himself another cup of coffee, letting the warmth spread through him. The weekend could now proceed as intended, quiet, calm, and under his watchful eye. Tyler and his friends might return someday, but they would now understand the balance between enthusiasm and responsibility and the importance of respecting boundaries. As he leaned back, the stars shimmering above the lake, Alex Morgan smiled quietly. This was his domain, his sanctuary, and he had protected it without raising his voice or losing control. No one took over Alex Morgan's cabin without consequence, and Alex Morgan never let anyone underestimate him. The next morning, the lake cabin was bathed in golden sunlight, the water sparkling and the air fresh with pine and lake breeze. Alex Morgan sat on the porch with his coffee, enjoying the quiet. The events of the previous night had gone exactly as he had planned. Tyler and his friends had learned an important lesson, and the cabin remained peaceful, exactly as it should be. Still, Alex knew the story wasn't fully over. In small communities, news traveled fast, and word of the previous night's confrontation had already reached HOA Karen. Alex hadn't expected her to appear in person, but sure enough, by mid-morning, a familiar black SUV rolled slowly down the winding road toward the cabin. The vehicle stopped near the edge of the trees, and out stepped Karen herself, her posture upright, her eyes scanning every detail, and her expression a mix of irritation and curiosity. Alex set down his coffee and stood calmly on the porch, waving slightly. "Good morning," he called out. "Lovely day, isn't it?" Karen's eyes narrowed. "Alex," she said, her voice clipped. "I hear there was some confusion last night. My son and his friends tell me someone was very involved at the cabin. Care to explain?" Alex smiled politely. "Of course. Tyler and his friends approached the cabin with plans to use it without permission. I spoke with them, made sure they understood the boundaries, and sent them on their way." Karen's lips tightened. She clearly wanted to argue, to assert control over the situation. Alex, however, remained calm. I handled it quietly, peacefully, and with respect, he continued. They learned an important lesson about respecting property and rules, and no one was harmed. Karen's eyes flicked toward the path where Tyler and his friends had been. She saw them now, helping each other carry their supplies back toward the main road, subdued and respectful. A small flicker of frustration crossed her face, but Alex ignored it, maintaining his calm authority. Your cabin, your rules, she said finally, though the tone suggested she was testing the limits. That's correct, Alex replied. Every property has its boundaries, respect is simple, and the consequences follow naturally if it's ignored. My goal was for the boys to understand that. Karen looked at him for a long moment as if trying to calculate how to respond. Then with a tight nod, she straightened her posture. I see. Well, lesson learned, I suppose, but this is a community, Alex. Rules aren't just for your cabin, they apply to all of us. Alex nodded. Agreed. That's why I addressed the situation calmly and fairly. Tyler and his friends now understand, and hopefully that understanding extends to others in the neighborhood. Learning to respect boundaries is part of living in a community. Karen's expression softened slightly, though she still carried a hint of annoyance. I'll make sure Tyler doesn't repeat this, she said. I don't want unnecessary trouble in the neighborhood. Alex offered a small smile. I appreciate that. The most important thing is that everyone learns and moves forward. No one got hurt, no property was damaged, and the boys walked away understanding the rules. Karen studied him for a few more seconds, then turned and walked back to her SUV. Alex watched her go, feeling satisfied. She might have influence in the neighborhood, but even she understood, if only silently, that experience, calm observation, and patience often outweighed confidence and entitlement. Turning back to his porch, Alex poured himself another cup of coffee. The lake shimmered peacefully, undisturbed. Tyler and his friends had returned to their homes, likely thinking about what they had learned. Alex knew the lesson would stick better than any lecture because it had been experienced firsthand. As he sipped his coffee, Alex reflected on the events. The cabin had remained safe, the neighborhood rules had been respected, and everyone had learned something about boundaries and responsibility. Sometimes the best way to teach was with patience, observation, and calm authority, not anger or confrontation. The weekend was now truly his. The cabin was his sanctuary, and the lake stretched out before him in quiet, shimmering beauty. Alex leaned back in his chair, letting the gentle breeze ruffle his hair. The challenges of the past days had passed, and the quiet triumph of responsibility and respect settled over him like the soft light of dawn. For Tyler and his friends, it had been a weekend of lessons. For HOA Karen, a reminder that influence had limits. And for Alex Morgan, a confirmation that patience, strategy, and calm authority could protect what mattered most, without unnecessary conflict. No one took over Alex Morgan's cabin without learning a valuable lesson. And Alex Morgan never let anyone underestimate him. The morning sun rose over the lake, painting the water in shades of gold and silver. Alex Morgan stood on the porch of his cabin, stretching and inhaling the crisp, pine-scented air. The previous weekend's events had passed, and the lake was once again quiet, serene, and entirely his. Tyler and his friends had retreated, their weekend plans foiled, and HOA Karen had driven off, no doubt reassessing her influence. The balance of peace had been restored. Alex poured himself a fresh cup of coffee and stepped down to the dock. The water reflected the early light like a mirror, and the soft rustle of leaves in the trees added a soothing rhythm to the morning. It was exactly the calm he had been hoping for when he first arrived at the cabin, and yet the satisfaction of having navigated the past days with strategy and patience added an extra sense of contentment. He thought briefly of Tyler and the lessons learned. The boy had been confident, perhaps too confident, but Alex knew that experience was the best teacher. The subtle reminders, the observation, the gentle but firm guidance, they had been enough to show the teenagers that boundaries existed for a reason and that rules were not optional. For once, the lesson had been absorbed without argument or conflict. As Alex relaxed on the dock, he noticed movement along the main road. Tyler and his friends were walking, backpacks slung over their shoulders, still subdued but smiling quietly at one another. It was clear they were discussing what had happened, recounting their mistakes and perhaps planning to avoid similar situations in the future. Alex allowed himself a small smile. Sometimes the most important victories were the quiet ones, the ones that left a lasting impression without fanfare. A faint beep from his phone reminded him of the messages he had ignored over the weekend. The calm of the lake was the perfect excuse to delay work and obligations, at least for a little while longer. Alex set the phone aside, deciding that the weekend belonged to the cabin, the lake, and the gentle rhythm of quiet triumph. Even HOA Karen had left a subtle impression. Alex knew she would reflect on the weekend, perhaps reconsidering how she approached influence and authority. She might continue to assert control in the neighborhood, but she had seen firsthand that patience, experience, and calm observation often outweighed confidence and entitlement. It was a reminder that true authority was measured not by volume or force, but by respect and strategy. By mid-morning, Alex decided to take a walk along the lakeshore. The water lapped gently at the rocks, small fish darted in the shallow edges, and birds called from the trees. Every step he took reminded him of why this cabin was his sanctuary. It was not just the location or the lake itself. It was the peace that came from knowing he had protected it thoughtfully, responsibly, and successfully. As he returned to the cabin, Alex reflected on the weekend's lessons. Respect, patience, strategy, and subtle authority had guided every decision. The teenagers had learned that enthusiasm alone was not enough, and HOA Karen had learned that influence had limits. And for Alex, it was a reaffirmation of his own principles. Preparation, calm observation, and thoughtful action could solve problems before they became crises. He stepped onto the porch, coffee in hand, and watched the sun climb higher in the sky. The lake sparkled, the trees swayed gently, and everything felt in perfect balance. There was humor in the situation, too. The memory of Tyler's confidence fading in the face of simple observation and subtle warnings was satisfying in a quiet, almost playful way. Alex took a deep breath, letting the warmth of the sun and the calm of the lake fill him. The cabin was safe, the rules were respected, and peace had been restored. This weekend had been a challenge, a test of patience and strategy, and he had passed it with quiet triumph. No one took over Alex Morgan's cabin without learning a valuable lesson. And as he sipped the last of his coffee, watching the lake shimmer under the morning light, Alex Morgan smiled quietly to himself. The weekend was his, the cabin was safe, and the balance of peace, respect, and authority was restored, just as it should be. The lake remained calm, the cabin secure, and for the first time in weeks, Alex allowed himself to simply enjoy the moment. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and join us for the next mystery on HOA Hunter Stories.